30. And I told him, what is this I'm seeing? And he said, well, there was misrepresentation of facts. And actually, we are having him this morning in Good Morning Uganda on the same issue. He said there was misinformation or representation of facts that HIV/AIDS in prisons. They were giving statistics of those that come to prisons and are tested, and giving the number of prisoners who are positive with HIV/AIDS.
So he's saying that the inmates come when they are already HIV
when they
positive.
have when they are HIV positive, they are tested, they are put on medication. So they were giving a report of the status of people with HIV in prisons. But they said somehow, for someone's benefit, he put it that 50% of inmates contract HIV and all that. So he said that was misrepresentation of facts. We are having him at 8 in Good Morning Uganda to give you more of that. But yesterday there's something that happened. Felix here, a man who was once in a seminary and who has lived for some time, will tell you that there is some respect we give to places of worship. First, we saw the Andeba Church of Uganda that was erased. I think it's St. Stephen's, totally put down by someone because of land wrangles. Yesterday in Nigeria, another church was erased because of land wrangles. Now, in my heart of hearts, I was asking myself, even if it is for financial benefits, how do you put down a place of worship? Just imagine, how do you wake up and raise down? You know, you come with caterpillars, you come with what? You completely clear a church. Just because you have quarrels like this guy, is it just something did in there? Up to now, we've never seen that church again built. But also this issue of DNA. Government came up yesterday and was very clear. Of course, today the Prime Minister is expected to give a detailed report on the floor of Parliament. I can't wait to hear that or to listen to it. But Ministry of Health said there are only 2 accredited. They accredited only 2 laboratories. That is the Government Analytical Lab in Wandegea and MBN laboratories. The rest have no authority to carry out DNA. They have not been certified, verified by government. And also government made it clear that no laboratory is allowed to take DNA samples outside Uganda unless they have gotten clearance from the Director General of Health Services, and I think something else there. So now, if you go to other places, those results, if they tell you negative or positive, you may not trust them, neither hold them accountable.
Well, I think that was a very good decision, considering what is happening rampantly with DNA testing. But also, it still has a gap, because I also understand that they're over-the-counter. What do they call them? The tests that people go and purchase from big pharmacies.
Oh,
we saw those circulating.
She said there are rapid testing kits. The minister said they're instructing URA and National Drug Authority to stop those tests, because those litmus whatever tests do not give right results when it comes to DNA.
Well,
so people are getting wrong results. If you use them, you're going to get, because by the time the ministry says we've banned them, even importation, because they don't give the right results at the end of the day.
Well, we hope that there is this gets ironed out, because either way there are consequences to this whole DNA testing. Felix Nkunda, good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Mollen?
I am doing all right.
How's your morning?
Yeah, the morning is okay. Obviously concerned about particular topics, but maybe what is getting you concerned this morning?
Well, not far from the thought of what you've been saying, but of course also lots of things did happen yesterday. Some sad, but some realities of the life we live. Among them is we saw also yesterday there was quite a big crowd in Rubaga Cathedral when they were praying for the late Apollo, aka Aponye. And of course the Deputy Speaker of Parliament also came out to add his voice to the Uganda, I think, Ministry of Works, Uganda Police in particular. We're looking at the Uganda Traffic Forces, that these cars that are parked on the roads, this has been a normative. People normally say, give those speeches on barriers. But we have said this time and again, these cars get spoiled and they are left in the middle of roads. In the middle of roads. But while all officers are focusing on petty things, third party what? But those are big crimes. They have caused, if you want to articulate the number of deaths we have had because of these kind of mishaps and very irresponsible, negligent. And this is what we say about DMCs. If a car can't travel from, let's say, Masaka to Kampala, why is it on the road? The car is going to become faulty like 5 times in that one journey. So why is it on the road? So probably that is something for us to look into. But we will be losing people time and again. And I don't want to say important, but probably everyone is important respectively. But we need to check that out. But of course, also something quite sad, as of course one of our colleagues lost his parent, that is Fakuru Wama, who lost his father, and we do condole and pray with him. Heartfelt condolences towards him and the family. And we know that it is God who gives and it is God who takes. He's the best one who can give solace in times like this. But of course, also, Mollen, from me, it's just a simple question, maybe for us all to ask each other. When everything comes down, what is left of us? Yesterday people were talking about Aponye saying all these big messages, or this is this.
But you know, that has been a norm here in Uganda. When someone dies and then people are bringing out everything, the negative comments on social media, it's just, I don't know how we have made it normal.
I saw people who made a press conference talking about how his death was planned, it must have been full. And I'm thinking people just don't
It's absurd.
Give the families and loved ones a chance to mourn in peace. Because honestly and truly, where do you get the moral authority as a blogger who to start making those comments? It's anyway sad, but also yesterday we did see the launch of the book of Juan and Katende, who is also a partner at Katende, same paper proprietor, and also probably they say owner of the Ebonies, VCL Studios, and Aristoc, which I learned yesterday when
recently he got the award of the lifetime achiever in terms of promoting the film industry and drama industry.
The award from
there's some Uganda Entertainment Awards, something like that. So it's the one who got lifetime achiever. Okay, so yesterday he did launch his book. Quite interestingly, they wrote about his life, people he has worked with, who he has touched. But for me, the most interesting was when the King, Ronald Muwenda Mutebi II, decided to write the introduction of this book. It was very beautiful. I didn't see that coming. So we're graced to be a part of that function, and indeed it's a blessing that we are invited. And we do celebrate people like that. I think it was worthy a celebration for our senior counsel Katende for what he has done, being that he has consistently filled the shoes of both practices as a litigant but also as an artist, because he particularly said to all of us that he has written every single play you've seen and directed it and produced it. Isn't that great? That's
a very huge achievement, and he has shaped the film industry for sure. If you know, telling his life story, that is a very inspiring thing, and I'm glad that that was put out. But also today, Felix and Robert, Uganda is celebrating World Population Day, and this is this year it involves UNICEF, and of course they continue to advocate, that is, for the quality care and services. But when you look at Ugandan population, we know that the numbers are always going up, and not just Uganda but everywhere. However, We also did see UNICEF commending the government of Uganda for its efforts in addressing population challenges, including the implementation of evidence-based policies and programs that prioritizing the health and welfare of its citizens. That is something that we continue to build on, and we do hope that as we celebrate this day in World Population Day, we are able to reflect more on how we can cover the gaps while addressing the challenges that come with population increase, of course. But a lot of things are happening out here, and of course outside of the country. We'll be taking you through the local news as well as international news. Robert, what do we have?
I think let's start with the DNA story, because DNA has been around this talk for so long, and now we see the Minister for Health, Dr. Jane Ruth Achen, who has restricted the DNA testing to only 2 laboratories in the country, that is the Government Analytical Laboratory and MBN Clinical Laboratory, all based in Kampala. She was addressing the media on DNA testing in the country at the Ministry of Health headquarters. Of recent, a number of people seeking DNA paternity test has increased in the country, resulting into increased social disharmony among families. The minister noted that government has instructed the Department of National Health Laboratory to work with National Drug Authority and URA to ensure that fake rapid DNA testing kits are not allowed in the country.
We're now still looking at our local stories. The recent operations by Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo have seen the joint forces of UPDF and FATAC eliminate key prominent leaders of the rebel groups and the thickets of the DRC. Now, notably, the notorious ADF commander, that is Lubakangani, was killed along with 3 fighters in the Mwarika Valley, North Kivu province. In the coordinated efforts, the Joint Security Task Forces apprehended at least 34 individuals in Karugutu sub-county in Toroko district.
And moving on, President Yoweri Museveni has hailed the late businessman Apollo Nyengemeher for his dedicated service to Uganda and East Africa community, and for establishing Aponye Uganda Limited, an entity, according to the president, that supported the economic stability of Uganda. Museveni's message was delivered by the senior presidential envoy to the president, Dr. Ruhakana Rugunda, during a requiem mass to celebrate Aponye's life at Lubaga Cathedral in Kampala.
Now, the Archbishop of Church of Uganda, His Grace Stephen Kazimba Mugalu, has challenged men to up their game of being responsible leaders in families. He noted that neglecting nurturing the boy child alongside their girl child is creating a mess generation of men in Uganda's societies. The Archbishop stressed that many men across Uganda have become lazy, leaving burdens of managing families to women. He was preaching to Christians of West Nile while concluding his pastoral visit to the sub-region at Emmanuel Cathedral, Mvara.
And crossing over onto the international scene, the Spanish Coast Guard says it has rescued 86 people from a boat off the Canary Island that had been spotted earlier in the day by a rescue plane. A plane and a ship were dispatched to initially search for a fishing vessel from Senegal that had about 200 people on board and had been missing for nearly 2 weeks. The rescue service initially thought that the boat spotted on Monday by the reconnaissance plane 114 kilometers to the south of the island of Gran Canary could have been the missing vessel, but its spokesperson said the rescue service found 86 people on board and only a further investigation would show where it had sailed from. The boat was being towed by Gran Canaria. Now, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has agreed to support the Sweden's bid to join NATO, the military alliance chief Jens Stoltenberg says. He said the Turkish leader would forward Sweden's bid to the parliament in Ankara and ensure ratification. Meanwhile, Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson said, "I am very happy. It is a good day for Sweden." Turkey had previously spent months blocking Sweden's application, accusing it of hosting the Kurdish militants. As one of NATO's 31 members, Turkey has a veto over any new country joining the group. Reacting to the news, US President Joe Biden said he welcomed the commitment by President Erdogan to proceed with swift ratification. Now, West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS, has chosen Nigerian President Bola Tinubu as its new chairperson at a time of deepening insecurity, including military coups and violent activity from armed groups in the region. West Africa has witnessed 6 successful military coups since 2020, making a backslide of democracy in a region that previously saw progress in shedding its coup belt. The South, whose president Umaru Sissoco passed on the rational chairmanship of the bloc to Tinubu on Sunday after a vote. The Nigerian president has called for swift action against insecurity and coups, which he said in the Hudson Valley, an unrelenting heat dome over Phoenix, ocean temperatures hitting 90 degrees Fahrenheit off the coast of Miami, and a surprising delay in Vermont, a rare tornado in Delaware. Now, a decade ago, any of these events would have been seen as an aberration. This week, they are happening simultaneously as climate change fuels extreme weather, prompting Governor Kathy Hochul of New York, a Democrat, to call it our new normal. Over the past month, smoke from the Canadian wildfires blanketed major cities around the country. A deadly heat wave hit Texas and Oklahoma, while torrential rains flooded parts of Chicago. Well, quite a number of things happening across the country, but we also know that from our dailies, we're spotting out some of the stories that are making headlines. Felix, what do we have this morning?
Well, in the papers, what's making the headline is you'll be looking at varsities seize papers of graduates over government debt. Wow. Okay. Okay. Now, benefiting eulogy for billionaire Aponye there. And of course, they give you a recount of what was said and who said what. Now, only 2 labs to carry out DNA tests, says minister, and government NGO squares off over oil pipeline. Now, still in the papers, your events in pictures, they give you all those. And Bukedia RDC arrested over by-election mess. Now, the Lizard comes out to say, is there co-parenting safe? That's a question for all of us to answer. But that's basically what's in the Daily Monitor.
Well, that story did I don't know. Well, government debts. I know that there are students that usually get those loans, government loans. I don't know how it goes. Do they ever pay back? That has always been my question. I don't know whether students pay back. But I think earlier there was something saying that they might scrap off the student loans from governments. That is going to take a toll on students because a lot of people actually go for that initiative. I don't know.
Apparently,
it seems like the time is not right.
Unfortunately, I don't know any, but when you say about lots of people, I don't know any. And
well, the number of, I remember the time I hosted the people in charge of these government loans. What they said was that actually they are hoping government may increase their budget. Because what is happening currently, there were fears. It wasn't that they're going to scrap, but there were fears that the money required to add new students on this scheme had not been appropriated. I don't have the updates now, but that was the fear.
Let me just ask a question, Robert. Where are these people's offices? The ones you hosted?
I think we got.
How can Ugandans and struggling students find them?
Well, I don't have that offered, but I remember I contacted them through the higher institute of learning, something like that.
But every university, actually, every university has an office for that, because I remember in Makerere, there is, you actually fill forms. You fill forms, then take to the office, then wait approval, and those that are approved are put on that scheme.
So I think there are over about 3,000 students that were on that scheme since inception. And
Felix doesn't seem to believe in this.
You see, this is the challenge. The fact that you've not benefited from a certain scheme doesn't mean it's not there. Actually, I mean,
you might not know the depth, but actually,
yes,
I know a lot of students
have benefited, and some have begun paying back the money that they got for their
I'm not
education.
disputing any of this. I'm just asking. I'm just asking. No, me, I had my opportunity to benefit from government, but not that scheme, the direct entry of government sponsored and what. But mine question is, where can struggling Ugandan child find these people? What's, you know, when you come here and tell people that there is A, B, C, D, and what's the use of you, Robert, knowing it, and Mollen?
The public
how many times have you informed the public about it?
Of course, when
that's
it
the
comes,
thing.
when we
the right people don't have the right information, is what I'm saying.
So there's
people who
need for
they should be in people are going to do exams of S6 marketing these things. But when you say there's an office at Makerere, Kumba, I don't think.
Because they give students that are already considering
enrolled?
getting actually I think enrolled.
So
this is what happens.
You enroll on
when the time comes when students are about to make their selections, this body advertises. They run adverts, and I've ever seen some on UBC TV telling students, please apply. You go online, you apply. But I think next week we shall make sure we bring those people again.
You try to look
for our people to better understand.
And we should bring in someone to talk about this.
Honestly, there's need, because that thing of all doing formalities that we ran in the paper, it was on TV. Those are formalities. You know what Ugandans do. Those are just done to account that.
But Felix, you've lost so much hope.
But that's one way of
the reality of the country we live in.
That's how communication is passed out, even for most of these initiatives.
I don't know where you live, and I've chosen not to be a pretender. I'm tired of the mess of some people. Have you seen how institutions hire people today? Because they know it's a requirement to run an advert, they'll run it. But you go again and go because you think. You know what you know, guys. Let's stop pretending, because
regardless,
it's the same thing.
I have seen.
That's why I'm saying. I want to burden Robert, as he has made a promise to our viewers, that he'll bring that gentleman or woman or whoever
next week. I'll bring them
and throw light. It makes sense. They are struggling, smart Ugandans who want to go to university. But honestly, it's as good as nothing when an opportunity is there but not known.
Yeah,
it makes no sense. And all of us here, surprisingly, journalists don't even have the right information. We all have scoops of information. I think it was this, but it should be like on the fingertips of every Ugandan.
Well, that is something to
I don't think
it
should be very scientific to get a government whatever loan.
But there are also qualifications. Not every.
That's okay.
And quite a number of students have benefited from this. I've seen it myself. I do know that there are still a lot of students that want to benefit from that. So as Robert brings in someone to talk about this, I know that.
And I'll greatly advertise that show. That tomorrow, this day, don't miss to know how you can benefit from the high students loan scheme, because the money is there. It's a government scheme. If you qualify,
they are saying they are going to
get the money.
Well, we still have a lot. We still have a lot to talk about this morning. We'll be going into our newsreel, but for now, we'll take you through the inspirational song of the day to kickstart your day today. When we get back, please make sure that you're part of the conversation. We'll be having a topical discussion right here on Newsreel.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
all I can say is that be here for it. We're here to make sure that in your morning we spice it up with all the things that are happening across the country, at least those that are concerning or should be concerning for every Ugandan, but also take you beyond to see what is happening elsewhere. Now, obviously, there is always a lot of things that are causing concern, that are causing a lot of people to think, really, what is happening in this country? And that, for me, this morning, is a story in prison. Now, the prisons department has come out to say that they are worried about the skyrocketing numbers of HIV patients within or among the prison inmates. Now, it begs a question. How is this transmitted in prisons? We are talking about inmates, people who have been there for quite some time and they don't actually interact between the male inmates and the female inmates. This is something very confusing for me, and I don't know what my colleagues have to say about it, but maybe they will say something. Let me first say hello to Robert. Good morning.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Et comment ça va?
Good morning.
Oh yeah, I thought so.
And good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for waking up with us this lovely Tuesday morning. It is a brand new day, and we are here to spice up your mornings to ensure you have a smile as you kickstart your day. Live one day at a time. Yesterday is gone, today is new, and there is new grace for you as you kickstart your day. Well, about the story, I touched me so much that I had to call the spokesperson of Uganda prisons, Frank Baini. That was yesterday around 7:30, and I told him, what is this I'm seeing? And he said, well, there was misrepresentation of facts. And actually, we're having him this morning in Good Morning Uganda agenda on the same issue. He said there was misinformation or representation of facts, that it is not that this spoke
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are looking at our newsreel this morning and specifically looking at the World Population Day and more of what it takes for a country to actually cover in the, bringing the advantages that come with the population growth, but also the challenges that that poses, and how can we harness these advantages that come with it, but also at the same time addressing the gaps that could actually cover up the challenges with that. But we know that UNICEF has continued to advocate for the quality work that can be done in terms of welfare for the citizens of Uganda. And what they were saying, actually, UNICEF, that is the United Nations Children Fund, has called upon or even commemorated Uganda for having taken the effort in managing its population, and it does advocate for further balancing of the population growth and the availability of resources for quality care and services, particularly looking at the newborns. And also the statistics are showing that we now have a population of over 45 million in Uganda. And of course, Uganda has one of the fastest growing populations in the world, with more than 50% of its citizens below the age of 18 years. Well, this number is also expected to double by 2040 as the population increases. So that means there will be need for children and families, a need for more when it comes to education, health facilities, access to clean water, and of course a lot that does come in, especially when you look at the protection of children. But also Uganda has made very, very significant aspects in terms of, providing essential services to its population, and we know that that is quite crucial in a growing economy, in a growing population. But we also want to tap into the advantages that come with population growth, and we date it back from when we started tracking the population, and we know that the numbers have been growing up. Looking, you could date back to the 80s, the 90s, up until today. There has been progress, and maybe we can look into some of those. Robert, what are we looking at in terms of the merits that are coming with this particular population growth for Uganda?
Very interesting, because it also brings me to, first, what are the factors that are driving Uganda's population to be growing by by 1986. Now going back to history, I want to copy our head of state, who will always refer to 1986, to show you how our journey has been. Uganda had a population of less than 10 million people. Today, in 2023, we're talking of a population of over 45 million. So we should examine ourselves. Why are we having this population increase? When they come and they tell you that our fertility rate per, of course, per woman in Uganda, Uganda has one of the world's high fertility rate, and this is science proven and researched, that on average a Ugandan woman from the age of 18 up to about 30 on average produces about, though they have a point I don't understand, 4.5 children on average. And this is just reducing now with more education. We were once at 6 point something for Uganda, and not very many countries in the world have that. So what are these factors? One, despite the fact that even during war children were being born and named Dirutaro or something like that, the peace and tranquility that we've had for this particular period, of course, has created more ability for people, because the absence of war does not mean peace, but relatively there has been peace, and there is peace, that now you see more people have no longer worried. They know that, well, they can have their children. Then the health sector. I remember when we were in school, we were being taught about were they 6 killer diseases? That include polio, tuberculosis, and these are now vaccinated. That maybe children, maybe children who would have died because of these diseases, because they would kill, One of them was measles. My brother Felix here will tell you, who have lived for some time, that when measles would strike a village, children would die like nothing. Just measles. I call it just measles because now, how do you tell me a child died of measles? But previously, and still my brother will allude to the fact that they even had certain beliefs. They named it Mulangira, you don't eat meat, the family, you don't have conjugal rights, you know, because there's a child having measles, so that night you don't touch your partner. You don't eat meat, you don't, there's a lot of things. To polio, we had children with various disabilities. Today, since 1986, government of Uganda moved into eliminating of these diseases that were killing children below the age of 5. Now vaccination is available. The would die now have grown into mature people. So when you improve because of immunization, the immunization policy, let's go also to health facilities. Today in Uganda, you have over 50% of the births being at least done under a trained personnel. This giving birth in banana plantations, giving birth because there is a woman around the area. Yes, they did some good work. And actually in the early days, government of Uganda tried to give them some information, some tools to use, but today almost every woman gives birth in a health facility. So death was stopped, peace was created, and now that was very clear that you're going to have a population increase. Education. Because when you have an educated population, there is a way they value life to ensure that there is more opportunity for these children to grow. Though on the other side, education also has had a limit to a bit of population. But in terms of how do we raise the diseases that used to kill these people, away from the immunized diseases, some of the diseases used to kill these young children were simply hygiene diseases, nutrition diseases, kwashako, this dysentery, malaria, because the people were not that educated. Now, having looked at a few factors that have driven our population growth, we want to look at advantages, like you said, of a high population. One, a high population, we must be very careful. It must be high and quality population. That is when you can get advantages of that population. If you have a high population that is not quality population, it is just a time bomb for that nation. Now, I don't know what we have in Uganda, but I think we have a mix. You have quality and then you have the other side. And I must be very honest, I'm not shy to speak this. If you have an educated population, and I'm not just meaning that people that have degrees, because if you have education, that education is not impactful, then it may somehow also be negative, because you're going to have people who know they're educated, they can't be employed, they don't have skills that they have got from the education system to sustain, to create jobs. So the first question we should ask ourselves, if you want to talk about benefits of a high population, if Uganda have achieved this, do we have a quality population? If you have your biggest number of persons, of people below the age of 18 to about, okay, if you have majority, because some statistics show about 70 something are from the age of 18 to 30. Now that is a very productive stage. But if you have about 40% of those wasted in various addictions, they're in drugs, they are typical drunkards and alcoholics, then that population is a danger. And I must say, that high population has begun biting this country.
Because now, Robert, you look at the current statistics showing that 50% are below 18, and we know that that is not a productive stage. So that means that even when you're bringing in the group that is probably not so productive, it's only a 50%. of the ones above 18. So we are looking at that gap that could actually be advantageous.
But also there are statistics that show you that from 18 to 30. And they give you a huge number that these are from between 18 to 30.
They still fall within the 50%. That's
Within
what
the
I'm trying to say.
And you see that is a productive age. Away from saying, because normally from 18 years up to 30 years, that stage of someone's life is very important. If you're not in school, where you get out maybe at about, if you've done so maybe 25 years, that means the world has already met you and you've begun hustling. From 18, you've begun hustling. You've caught up with the world. Because if you're not in school, by 18, if you're a man, you've begun fending for yourself. No one is considering you as an infant. You have to be working. So the question is, do we have a quality population? A high population can only be beneficial for you when it has the power to produce, not children. No, to produce goods or offer services, when it has the capacity to purchase. Those are what run the economies. That your people have the capacity to produce what your country needs. That is one. Do they have the capacity to purchase what your country needs? Otherwise, that's why you see His Excellency always talking about let's reduce imports and improve exports. We need to have a population that has the purchasing power, so it can give services, it can give products. So if the population in Uganda, there are high rates of dependency, that one Felix Nkunda may have 30 people depending on him. Yet when they are not productive, when you go to other countries, you go to a homestead where almost every person staying in that home is productive. And we are talking about majority, which is a youthful population. You go to a house where the father has 4 sons, they went through school, they went through university, they are home seated. Daddy has to fend for these children, feed them when they fall sick, buy them clothing as they are looking for jobs. They are not productive. So this is the population. Now that is the educated level of it. That you have so many educated youth that are not employed, they don't have the power to purchase, they are not producing, neither are they giving a service. Now you go to those that are not educated. You have them, many in the ghettos there, or in other areas. Those that are in agriculture are in Chenda Chonka. Peasantry farming, the one we are talking about, the 39% out of the money economy totally, that you want to bring into the money economy. So even those that we assume they're in the villages, Valima, they are digging, they're not productive. They don't have the power to purchase, they're not producing, they're not giving a service. Now when you go to those in urban centers, they have been wasted in different addictions, alcoholism, and only a few percentage has made breakthroughs, that is in the informal sector. So that population, it is not advantageous to a nation. It is a time bomb to a country, and it's just waiting for moments if nothing happens. Look at our politics today. Look at the level of who we are now treasuring. You will see that the likes of Felix Yukama, I'm a TV presenter, I am a lawyer, I am this, the likes of Kirabo's Mollens, go to an election today, contest with someone. If we are talking about a cancer where there is no education level required, you can never defeat that person, because they are the majority and they will pull the shots.
Well, very good points that you've put across, Robert, and of course did talk us through the factors that are driving this population. But we're talking about quality care and services, especially when it comes to enriching the entire population. And I'll bring in Felix here. While we are talking about that, while we are talking about numbers going up, and Kirabo did talk about the fact that we have the productive section of Ugandans and the non-productive, the statistics are showing there is a 50-50%. But we want to look at the impact. There is a 50% for the population, 50% is below 18 years of age, which we are considering to not be in a productive stage to, you know, contribute a lot to the country. So we'll want to look at the impact of what this means to the country in terms of the resources, in terms of course, the services that are offered within the country, but also as Uganda, have we really created the space to, because we know it does come with challenges and gaps here and there. As government of Uganda, has there been any form of you know, initiative to address these gaps while also talking about the impacts of this population?
Well, first and foremost, I, with due respect, I don't think those statistics are right. And I'm sorry, but with due respect, I don't know whatever source they come from. I find them very much muzzled, defiltered, misplaced, and probably inapplicable to the realities of what we see in this beautiful country. Secondly, you will note without caution that when you talk about population in relation to the question you asked, Mollen, useful or not useful, you'll be surprised that the composition of a useful population is not necessarily actually related to their ability to be part of production. Because a population's given stance is not in its present abilities, it's in its projected abilities towards a national set goal. Because, for example, if we ask today how far is our population assisting us in achieving the vision, I don't know now which vision we are dealing with, Robert. We used to have vision 2020, which is past 2025.
Now we have 2040.
They go on adjusting with time. There's a time we were told also by the Minister of Finance that by 2022, every Ugandan will be earning how much? Surprisingly, we ended up knowing that every Ugandan is being demanded.
There is a
higher tune to. So, you see, when you talk about population, those are the things that give you the reality of what kind of population. And as we mark a big day like this, the World Population Day, the threshold is on whether or not the population we carry as a country, secondly, East Africa, thirdly, Africa, fifth, the world, is able to deal with the most biting challenges and also promise a much softer landing for the future. I don't know if we can answer that question today in Uganda positively. That is our population able to deal with our problems? When you put our liabilities as a country on one side and put the population on this side, can we be able to deal with these? I don't know what you would think of that yourselves, but in my opinion, I would say that we are totally not even close to the reality. And I can give you one of the examples from what Robert was using here. Let's start at because for you to make a true evaluation on the nature or the type of population you have, you will use a yardstick of the most essential attributes to life. 1, shelter, feeding, clothing, transportation, and general welfare, which will entail the small minimum academic standards and all these things. How much of these can be afforded by our population? Now, does that mean that our population is a living population or a surviving population? That is a question for all of us to ask and answer. What kind of population do we have? Do we have a surviving population or a living population? Secondly, those two questions also will be answered by the fact of how many or how much of our population is engulfed in reasonable production, as Robert was saying earlier. How many people, out of 100 people, how many of them are part of the production chain? Later on, you go into the consumption chain, and then, of course, you'll go into the expenditure chain. Out of every 100 people you find, how many of them can purchase any of the four most essential aspects? Shelter, clothing, can transport themselves, and of course can feed themselves. Now, if you have less than 50, that's what I was challenging what the statistics you're saying, Mollen, about the 50%. Because if you find that not more than even 20% of your population can ably do any of those four, you're dealing with a what you call a population shock. Because all those four will determine the production abilities of the various sects of population. Secondly, Robert did allude to the fact that population must be productive, which I concur with him. But we must also be able to have a guided discussion on what we call governance, the type of governance and how it relates to a productive population. What is the role of governance in enabling a productive population? Does governance play a role? If it does, what role? That's a question we must answer. When we celebrate days like this, is it enough for us to say that there's 70% of Ugandans are youth? I have heard that normative many times.
Actually, it is 78% of the population is below 30 years. And those between 15 to 30 are 8 million.
We're looking at different statistics here, but I think what we were considering this morning is the report that came out from UNICEF indicating that kind of figures. And maybe also Robert is getting it from another source.
I'm getting
but
from
whatever
Uganda,
it is, we know
Bureau
that there is an increasing trend in population.
We
can
for a fact, we
that.
believe that at least the number of youth is much more than any other sect. Now, what does that mean? If we celebrate a day like this, can we say we are proud of that? And I can ask you in a simple yes or no. If you ask my sister Mollen, can we ably proudly say that we are proud of the existence of this figure? Robert, can we ably say that?
A direct yes or no may not come from me, but I'll just say that there are strides we've made. However, they still are very
then simply that means no. When you put it in a very big, that means it's a no. You're just trying to be gentle with your answer. But the reality is this, and that's the fear that we are having a huge population, seeming useless population, but it is not by choice. I also want to add
use
that
the words to be polite, and I use quality
it is
population.
not by choice. This is where I want to bring in style of governance. That you can't blame the youth for being inactive without the space to do so. For example, we have continuously told or had discussions in or relating to what is available for them. Because that's a governance issue. You can't blame them for being useless when there is no space for them to be useful. You remember when the introduction of the woman's seat in parliament, at council, at what? There was a reason. How have we treated this particular sector of youth to make them useful? We must ring fence their existence. And this one we have said time, we must ring fence their existence. For example, when you go and you ask for a job as a graduate of maybe engineering, shouldn't there be an opportunity? Like we see different companies have what we call graduate positions. Now, that is a ring-fenced opportunity for. Does government do that? Of course, we have seen with some of the authorities. I've seen with URA. I've seen a couple of. At least I've seen with URA. Now, that is the way to go. For example, when you have some projects away from saying youth livelihood, what is? Of course, there are beneficiaries. We have seen the presidential initiative on skilling. I think
the girl child.
The girl child. Now, those are that's the way to go. That is like arming your population. But how many of those do we see? How many? Because when you talk about population, it is useless to pride about a big population. Nigeria has over 200 million Nigerians. But they're all over the world. They're running away from their country. Go to India. Now 1 point something billion. Go to China. Now, the difference is this, that Asia has known the value of population. That's why you don't see many Chinese roaming all over the world, unless they're invited. They're not all over, like Indians, like Nigerians, because they are using their humongous numbers for own benefit. That's why almost in every Chinese backyard there's some production going on. They have known the use that let us use apple to reduce the cost of labor. But what are we doing with ours? That's why I think yesterday or the other day when I said that the takeoff stage for any economy, struggling economy to get to a sustainable existence, these are the challenges that people don't realize the opportunities that come with some masses, like for example masses, that today you see what is the most trending activity for the youth, in your opinion, Robert? When you get 10 youth, at least you're sure at least 6 of them will be doing this. What would you say?
I don't know.
Mollen, I don't know if you have any, but you realize that
at least when I get 10 youth, I'll know at least I have about 30 that are in. I mean, if there are 10, I have maybe about 7
who are doing what?
But it also depends on the skills that they have. You might need to think about what skills do they have. How can you have?
Do they have skills?
Exactly. So if you're talking about a certain number, then you also have to consider what do they bring on the table.
Now, what I'm asking is for us to make identity of what is taking up the youth's time.
Internet.
Okay. If so, what are they doing with internet? What are they doing on internet?
We have
you ever purchased anything on internet, Robert?
Yes.
Who sold it to you? Was it a youth?
I don't know. It was a delivery person that brought, but
okay, the delivery boy, was he a youth?
Yeah, he was a youth.
Now that would make sense. Let me tell you, people talk about, and I've heard this narrative which I call very clandestine and myopic, when people start to think of it that out of the 70%, 40% are below ages of they say 18 or 17. Now that is a very, very, very alien way of thinking. When you travel elsewhere, in some of the countries I've told you, when you go to the Western world, China, Asia, and wherever, science gives it to us that at the age of 3, a child has started to understand. And that's the point where they learn best. When you go to, I've seen this with my eyes, and I've been blessed to be in both those places. Where there is not much production, like in Europe, because they don't do a lot of production, you find that a child will go to by grade 4, they are employed. You'll see them either working in a restaurant as washing plates, serving. You've seen these kids. In high school, it is a must. They're already being trained the value of being productive. Now, kids are paying taxes as early as 4-5 years in those countries. Because once you're employed, you have a tax you pay. But here we have old, gray-haired men who think paying a tax to a country. I've asked time and again, why doesn't a borderman pay payee? Why do I have to pay payee, Kirabo, Mollen, and a border person doesn't pay payee? It's called pay as you. Why doesn't the chapati boy pay payee? Useless population. When you go out there, I'm telling you, in China, these phones, some of you who love to use, I don't want to mention names of phones, but you've had various, you find a phone called Qui, Q-U-I. You look for the company on internet because it's someone who made the phone, and that person is paying a tax. They're part of production. They're exporting. Now, for you, what are our children doing? every weekend. When I'm trying to come swimming, when I'm trying to come swimming, when I'm trying to come ballet dancing. Jesus, you're telling from Mazina Maganda, even like it just gets worse. And that's a stereotype of a growing economy and society. We tend to not to prioritize the most useless things.
But do we also have enough resources that we can tap into, even when we're talking about empowering this particular group?
What's enough, Mollen? What's enough?
Because you also look at what they can do within the country.
What can they do? That's the question, Mollen. It's us now, with that kind of, what can they do? Everything can be done. And the thing is that we just don't, we want to be what we are not. But everything can be done.
So it is about
if a Chinese child is making a phone, ours can master the art of growing a carrot. They don't have to make a phone like the others did. I don't know if it makes sense, but we just have to cut out our own ways. I'm not asking our population, but we must be intentional. And government is part of the disabilities that has, for example, you come to education. It's until most recent that they are changing there. Why, if you want a productive population, why are you teaching them Canadian what?
Preludes.
Why? Let's be honest.
Well, that brings in a very, very good point. But we also want to...
So when a child grows and they can't be employed, because we Canadian it is, in the bank to count money, gojo zunga na smile nzini, smile zulu natal.
We want to look at how we move forward. We know that this actually does bring in a lot of potential, even when we are looking at growing numbers, but also how we can now address the gaps or the challenges that come with it. Is it about skilling? Do we need to do more there? And more of what can we do now to make sure that we can harness the power of population growth. And quickly as we conclude, I'll start with you, Robert.
I'll try to be as brief as possible because I think there's so much that we have to do as a country. One, we've done so much in having high population growth, like I mentioned earlier. Now, first and foremost, Felix talked about a country known as China. We need, first and foremost, that all of us as a country, as people of Uganda, we need to have mechanisms of population control. To begin with, China at one time had a policy of population control. One child. If you had another, well, you knew what that meant. Population control. Only 20% of our women are able to access contraceptives. So, first, and today I think you see these memes all over, the planned children, you know. The issue of having children by chance, not by choice, is something we should move away from. Because no matter how much our government tries to inject, when we still have this high rate of population growth, it may not be in tandem with development. So we must look at, first and foremost, population control. Two, we must ensure as a country keeping the girl child in school, because research has shown that the longer the girl child remains in school, then it delays that time of producing. Today, Uganda, we are faced with teenage pregnancies. You know what happens? It's a trickle-down effect. A girl of 13 years gives birth. She's not empowered. There's a trickle-down factor to the child she has produced. And this child may not have proper education, even when you have quality education, because the mother may not be able to afford. Keep girls in school, have people well sensitized about birth control mechanisms. Now, I looked at that as in terms of individual, as parents, as people. Let's have planned children. Government, one and very important, the education system. Let it be of value that at whatever stage someone stops us, they're productive. A child completes P7, they can do nothing. Goes to senior 4, they can do nothing.
Who's to blame for that, Robert?
I'm talking about government.
But whose fault is that?
The education system.
Who's in charge of education?
Government, and that's what I'm saying, that government, we should revise and think of our education system. What value does it add to what it churns out? That if a person drops out of primary 7, can that person do something? If a person, because we still battle with high rates of school dropout. If a person stops at senior 4, what can they do? Because not everyone must have a degree. No. And even many with degrees. Today I have so many people that have gone to vocational institutions. They are making money as those that finished and went all the way to be proud of degrees. They are moving around. This plumber every day is making money. This guy who go to Katwe informal sector. These guys are doing well. They have a ability to look at certain things, you're importing them, then they manufacture them and they sell them a lot of money. Now, away from the education system, we should have deliberate plans and practical ones to ensure that the existing population that is not productive, we bring it, we come up with the policies, we come up with direct efforts. For example, today, I'm happy with what they call the Directorate of Industrial Training. This directorate is saying, how do we bring the informal sector? How do we examine these young men and women that have gotten these skills? How do we add value to them, give them qualifications that can enable them to seek greater employment? They will examine you as a welder. Government has come up with a number of youth empowerment schemes, but I think the issue of accountability and monitoring and supervision, programs like youth livelihood, programs today we are talking about the parish development model, which is a good program when you listen, when you read about it, but when we go down to the ground, implementation, we lose it at that. So when we look at economic empowerment, education, methods of controlling population growth, I believe we shall have a productive population.
Absolutely. Felix, as we conclude, how do we move forward?
Well, for me, I think the problem is not with giving birth. That I will not agree with my brother Bob here. The issue is not birth. And clearly, if there's an opportunity for people out there, give more birth as much as you can. Once people take up the position of being leaders, that is their burden to plan for the population. People have, our politicians think that politics is now style and career. But we must plan. This is a burden of government to plan for this country. Let's not do with the pretense. Job creation, wealth creation, livelihood. So for me, I don't agree with the issue about giving birth, fertility. You maximize your fertility in whichever way you can. I don't agree with Felix. You can have your one child.
Even in developed countries,
those are characteristics of poor and
no, even in developed countries, you see still families look at child giving birth as something, because no matter what government, how much government can do, when you have so much of these people, one man giving birth to 30, 40 children because they can, your government may not give you each and everything, even if they have proper systems. If we move with that population increase, still your resources are going to be outnumbered. China, you've just praised China, but it reached a time and had to control its population.
It had controlling its population when it was almost going to 1 billion. So
that's put a valid point though, because the only way we are getting population increase is through giving birth.
But the population increase is not the problem. And I think that's where I disagree. Even the rate is not the problem.
Increase is okay,
the problem is the mismanagement of national resources. That it is one person benefiting for a resource of 2 million people. That's what I'm saying. So let's not blame the women who are fertile. That's a natural problem. But I'm blaming a Kirabo who's eating billions of money that's supposed to feed 2 million Ugandans. You see, let's not put our back for the bad governance. Let's not part people, because if they suppose people are stealing medicine. Now, for you seeing the issue when you go to hospital, there's no medicine. Now you're blaming the woman who's giving birth, but you're putting your eyes off the person who steals the money. It's the issue is good. 45 million is nothing. Countries are struggling. 45 million. Tanzania has how many people? Kenya.
We're actually 31, ranking as number 31 in the world in terms of, so we are up there.
But no, we are not very, but Mollen, our population is not very much the problem. It has its challenges, but the management, I've told you here that, for example, yesterday we're looking at the story of chairman. It needs how many billions, Robert?
About 60. The Electoral Commission
I gave you a true example. You go and look into the budgetary allocations of this financial year, where money was put. Individuals got money vis-a-vis a national. The problem then is not the population, but the mismanagement of national resources towards enabling this population to be productive. Okay, how many? For example, when you look at these people you're arguing about, Robert, are farming. Who's buying their produce? Now, with what has been happening in Sudan, how do you convince Kirabo to go again and make a sword? These are the things we must work on. The population is not yet a problem, honestly and truly. But we are abusing this small population. We need to maximize its potential. It's what I'm saying. Let's not, we are shifting the issue. No,
brother, I agree with you to a certain extent.
Anyway, the challenge is that I'm concluding.
Let him conclude.
And unfortunately, you don't have a chance for rejoinder. But this is what I'll say in my conclusion. The population of Uganda today is below the belt. It's not of quality. Actually, it is unfair, but the right word to say, it is by far a useless population. And that's deliberate. Because the beneficiaries of Uganda as a Uganda are 2 or 3 people, or 5, 6, against the 45 million. So you cannot have a useful population when it is only a handful benefiting on behalf of the 45. And this cuts across, go to education. We go to infrastructure. A road that is used by all Ugandans to ferry, for time management, to ferry goods. It is not being done at the cost of one person who probably steals. All these things, when systems are in place, services are delivered timely, the population will shift up. Because the aspects of motivation, involvement, acceptance. But today when you have a population, and when you talk about the youth, by far, who don't feel part of the national contribution, 78%. They don't feel to be part of, because that also matters. And this is evident when you go into, have you seen elections? Our youth are hooligans. They have been reduced to hooligans. Have you ever seen a university strike? You would think it's a market strike. But these are seeming supposed to be. So let's deal with it. Sure. Let's try to make our quality, and let's have a fair approach to national issues in terms of gain. When you build schools, build them like your kids can study there. When you talk about export in this country is manned by about 5 people. There's Kirabo. When you go to, as long as you get the point, and these are the rich people. Now, where are you going to export your mangoes? You use Kirabo.
One goes to be with that.
And you're saying to the ones now, it is a very unfair economic, and for me, that's the problem. We are dealing with a very unfair socio-economic platform, and that's what is disorganizing.
So to it's all about leadership?
Not necessarily. It's about also style of governance. Leadership sometimes is bigger, but the style of governance. It is for me. This kind of, for me, for us, for me, it's us against them.
All deserving.
Yeah, it's us against them.
Well, it's quite a very long conversation that we could have about this, but Felix does bring out a very good point of governance, and that is something that we should be paying attention to if we are to take care of the population. While we talk about quality care, that is something that should also be focused on. And this year, as we look at World Population Day, out of the 8 billion lives that are there. Now also the UN is moving with a theme about gender equality, looking at how we can empower girls and women to be in a very,
when will that
in a very productive.
Very problematic. I don't even know
women
why.
Still that vulnerable.
We are talking about productivity, but also the fact is that this is the same group that usually does not have a seat. Yeah, when it comes to making decisions, when it comes to, taking on positions, and this is everywhere. So that is something to also look at. But also today we want to look at the dailies also coming in from our neighbors here. We'll be looking at what you can find in the Daily Nation. And the big headline right there, blocked. President Ruto suffered another blow yesterday after the High Court declined to lift orders suspending the implementation of the Finance Act 2023. That must have him puzzled. It's something that we know President Ruto was rooting for. But also in the Daily Nation, IMF board meets to decide on Kenya's new 57.8 billion shilling loan. That's for you right there, and much more of the stories in the Daily Nation. Crossing over to the Citizen, why financial inclusion has soared in 5 years. That is a story you can find in the Citizen, but also they give you much more. Anti-graft bodies in Africa week, says Hosea. A lot of that government draft 52,000, that is due JKT members into the BBT scheme. A lot of the stories in there. Right now we will be taking a short break. When we get back, we look at traffic and weather updates. Good morning.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial *165*5*3# to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
In fulfillment of the constitutional obligation, which mandates the state to make reasonable provision for the welfare and maintenance of the aged, the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development is implementing the Social Assistance Programme for Empowerment, SAGE, designed to provide income security and reduce poverty among older persons. Over 300,000 older persons in 146 districts in Uganda have benefited from the grants. The income security has made life better for eligible older persons aged 80 years and above, registered with the National Identification Registration Authority, NIRA.
Nze Maria Nasanga n'emyaka igenda kukoona 10 guno gwentambuza. Tuli mu Katosi kanso ekyalo tuli Lugazi nti mukoddomi wange ye yaŋŋamba essente ez'abakadde zigenda kufunibwa mu kitundu gundi obulimi era nanzirukira niŋŋenda nziguzeemu embizi nineggala n'ennyumba yange yali njereere. Bwe mba nga zibaddeko bbeeyi okutunda ssente ze njagala mpeerereko abaana battu nange mbyeko. Abantu abajja okuyingirira abakadde tuliko abavubuka abayagala ku ssente nga nze bwe nnina embizi nga balowooza nti natunze okiwulira ajja akuyingirira akuggyeko ssente. Bwe lwajja ninfunawo akalembereza ninsigala kuwulirizanga bweru kiro kubanga era nemba n'embwa yange eri bwebogola ninfuluma ndabe ekiri kuki ku bisolo byange. Kati obuzibu bwe nnina obusinga bwakuweerera abaana bato netulye n'okulya tube bulungi. Bannyambyeko ekitundu okusobozesa kye nnaalya ekyo mbadde njebaza etwongeremu amaanyi.
This is a message from Expanding Social Protection, ESP, implementing the program under the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. ESP, better life chances for all.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, good morning, Uganda. We're looking at the traffic situation this morning in some of the roads that you might actually want to look out for. If you're coming in from the side of Ntinda towards town, you're looking at areas of Ntinda Road, just a bit of clear traffic over there. And also for Katalima Road, that's where we're having some intense traffic with red lines. So that is one you should be, you can look out for. Also, if you're coming in from the side of Naguru, you might want to consider also there is a little bit of traffic building up. That is along Katalima Road as you join into the main, that is Naguru Avenue, as you join into that is the Kampala Jinja Highway. But also coming in from, that is from Nakawa, you do have some traffic building up over there, right from the areas of Nakawa as you join into Ntinda Road. There is a stretch of red lines right there indicating quite some intense traffic that is over that road. But continuing, as you join into the Kampala Jinja Highway, you do have a little bit of traffic as well from the side of Nakawa. But as you join into Lugogo bypass, then the traffic starts to clear up and you do have a clear way that leads into town. You also look at the roundabout as you have a junction that is from the old Port Bay Road. You do have clear traffic over there. Wampeo Avenue, just a small distance off the roundabout where we have some intense traffic. But other than that, it does get clear as you look at continuing with the Kampala Jinja Highway. Now, as you reach the traffic lights, that is also a connection from Access Road. That is where you have a bit of traffic coming in from the Mukwano area, 8th Street, and that is the traffic that builds up as you join onto the traffic lights. Also from the upper side, that is for Usefully, you also have some intense traffic. But as you join Kampala Road, there is some clear traffic over there that could be easy for you to navigate. Away from that, we'll also be looking at our satellites this morning, looking at how the weather is over Uganda. We did start off with mostly cloudy weather developing for the northwestern part of the country as well as parts of western Uganda, where we did see a few rains, that is across parts of Fort Portal and extending on to, that is the Rwenzori area. That system is still there and most likely will be dumping in more rains over the area. We're also looking at more cloudy weather, again developing for southwestern parts of the country as well as the Lake Victoria Basin. And we also have a particular system that is building towards northern Uganda that will be bringing in rains, especially across parts of Gulu, Kitgum, and also looking at the northwestern part of the country. But that will be later on as the morning progresses. Otherwise, the rest of the country is having mostly sunny weather for this morning. But also more, we want to look at what is happening, especially tracking down the records that have been broken, that is at the end of June. We do know that so far June has been the hottest month on record, but also yesterday there is another report that did come out from the World Meteorological Organization indicating that this week has actually been the warmest so far, the warmest week on record, and that has been analyzing the global mean sea surface temperatures and the daily temperatures that were recorded for this week. And that is also looking at the numbers that were recorded on the 7th of July, that is 17.24 degrees Celsius. That is the global mean in terms of averaging the entire world in terms of temperatures. And it dates back to what was given out as well in 2016. That is when we also had some of the months breaking records. And you look at August 2016 that had 16.94 degrees on average. And now we have surpassed that number. We're looking at 17.24 degrees Celsius. That is when it comes to July. And obviously that does bring in a lot to consider right there. But 2023 is actually on track to becoming the hottest year on record if you're looking at all these challenges that have come up with also the extreme weather events involved. Now, this is an analysis based on the GRA 3Q information. Of course, those are the materials that are used to get in some of these products, but also more of, if you look at the curve that is even being drawn from this analysis, you see that between May, right from May is when the world started warming up, and that was from the very first day of May. We look at that curve going up, and that does go into a highs of June, where we have the orange line right now that is indicating how far we've gone into June and July, and of course tipping off the first week of July as the hottest week on record. And the projection is also still indicating that we could have more temperatures going up as we look at more of these increases. Also, the surface temperatures that were analyzed as of the report that came out yesterday from the World Meteorological Organization is also showing a lot of temperature anomalies for June 2023 leading into July, and also still being marked as the hottest on record. We did see a lot of countries bringing in more numbers, and also what the Meteorological Organization is now worried about is that this exceptional warmth in June and the start of July is also linking with the onset of the development of the El Nino event, which is expected again to further fuel the heat both on land and in oceans that will lead to more extreme weather events. And according to what the Professor Christopher at WMO, that is the Director of Climate Science, is saying, is that this could be involved with heat waves, and more of what is expected is that when El Nino develops going into 2024, we could be looking at extreme flooding for areas especially towards the eastern parts of Africa, and a lot of areas that could pick up in terms of more tropical cyclones developing. The analysis that was done also does coincide with the Japanese analysis concerning the same numbers, that also confirms that this could actually be bringing in more extreme weather events. We will be following up this report, and of course as we continue, as climate scientists continue to analyze this data and make projections on how the future could look like in terms of a temperature rise and the associated impacts. We'll leave it at that. We will be going for Good Morning Uganda agenda that will be coming in right after this. We'll take a short break. Robert will be back to look more into the agenda.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial *165*5*3# to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
Juko.
Yo.
Wachikuwa. Check the shopping, man. What's your secret?
Haven't you heard of the parish development model, PDM?
Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk.
No, Sebatia. It is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a portrait project, and now things are moving.
Juko. I thought I was one of your friends.
You are.
But you left me behind.
I didn't leave you in poverty. What you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that. The parish development model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better. PDM, my parish, my development, my life.
This is the University of Africa. On the streets, you get your real education. Here, everybody has a degree of something. But the most important qualification is imagination. His reason is to be the GOAT. The reason to imagine is to take the beat and make it lit. So no matter what your situation, just use your imagination.
UBC is the national public broadcaster. We educate, inform, entertain, and inspire our audiences. You can watch us on free-to-air channel 001, DSTV channel 282, GoTV channel 371, Star Times channel 201, Zuku TV channel 20, and Azam TV channel 350. Even when your subscription expires, you can still watch UBC for free on your pay TV platforms.
Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning and thank you for being part of this show, which is Good Morning Uganda. Welcome to Good Morning Uganda Agenda. Now, there is a saying that everybody is a potential prisoner. You never know when you'll visit the University of Understanding, any part in this country, because we have 260 prisons in Uganda. So, you never know. Once upon a time, there's a very interesting story of one person who was in authority. If I remember very well, he could have been either the vice president of this country by the name of Paul Muwanga. He was told that situations in prisons are not that very good. And I think these brothers need blankets. Then he answered and told them, a prison is not a hotel. They have gone to serve a sentence. Time changed and he was in the coolers and said, but you see, these women don't have sugar. By then that was the situation. They rightly replied to him that you're here as a prisoner, not in a hotel. Very interesting. Recently, I want to quote the words of one of our ministers of state who was able to visit, and when he came out, he said that God had a plan for him to go to these places, and what he discovered, God had sent him so that he can advocate for good situations or conditions, actually good conditions, both at police and prisons. Now, yesterday the media was awash with reports that the Parliamentary Committee on HIV/AIDS had revealed that 50% of people living with HIV/AIDS had contracted this in various prisons of Uganda. Now, this sent an alarm to many people. So we had to find out. And this morning, I bring to you the spokesperson of Uganda Prison Services, Frank Baine, to clear the air. Because many people have relatives, have friends, and like we said, anyone can be a potential visitor, either permanently, partially, or for some few times in these universities of various prisons in Uganda. And today we want to look at the welfare of inmates in our prisons. A lovely morning to you.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Kirabo and dear viewers. Like they have told you, I'm Frank Baine, Senior Commissioner of Prisons and Prison Spokesperson. And indeed, this morning, I'm here to share a few things what is going on or what goes on when you are the other side of the law. And therefore you are with us in the University of Understanding, as Ebre mentioned. Well, to go straight to your report, especially, actually Parliament didn't find out that they went and investigated, no. Uganda Prison Service, in joint with the CDC, Center for Disease Control, actually carried out a survey in the prisons. And this report came out in 2019 as part of our due diligence. A report was given to Parliament. It is a very big report of 188 pages. But unfortunately, maybe one or two people decided to speak like sometimes we read the Bible. You just look for the line which suits you, and that's what you capitalize on for the message. Because in the survey, it's true that the prevalence of HIV in prisons is higher than the one in the public, because the national prevalence, HIV prevalence is at 6.5%. But in the prison, for males it's 11%, and for the females it's 13%. Now, the reason is I would say not simple but obvious. If a person is going to rape, chances are that this person will not look for a condom. A person who is, remember, 65% of the people we have in prisons are charged of defilement.
65%? I need to get that.
Yes, if you add minor defilement and aggravated defilement, 65% of the inmates are on defilement. Now, and when you go for those practices like defilement, I don't think the majority would even expect to be using a condom. Even beyond that, if a robber stole money or robbed money and he went to the bar to drink, to celebrate his success of robbery, so chances of him getting a condom with this person who is serving him is very, 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 very minimal. So in behavior, behaviorists say there is a correlation between the carelessness this person exhibits against the law as another carelessness of other aspects of his life. So somebody who is not fearing to be shot with a bullet, chances are that he will also not be scared by the issue of dying of AIDS. So that's why, and the majority of them, by the way, don't know they have HIV until when we examine them on entry. But true, about I think 10% of the people get this AIDS from inside for many reasons. One of the reasons
that is where my interest is, because according to this report, the touching bit is not those that come with HIV/AIDS, but those that contract HIV/AIDS within.
One of the greatest problems is about ignorance. Even when you sensitize some people, decide to selectively listen or not, because like there are prisoners who don't care that if he found a razor blade, he's not going to care who has used it. He's going to use it to cut his nails. He's going to use it to shave. So that's how they end up sharing some of these instruments. Ignorant, even after being sensitized. You know, some people even think some of these things are still superstition because of the higher illiteracy level we have in the prison. Of course, two, when we are correcting people, it's true, some of these homosexuals sneak into our system. And when they go in, they don't stop their practice, especially amongst those partners. Because if they are partners and they have been arrested on the street and they have gone, you will not know sex is a secretive thing. But basically, the infection in the prison is more on the ignorance of the prisoners than saying it's the conditions that are forcing them.
Now, I want to get you on record and get you right. You're not refuting that there are people in prisons who contact HIV/AIDS through sexual intercourse.
Well, I cannot guarantee, because I don't have...
But that will mean of the same sex?
Yeah, that would mean of the same sex. But you know what is very interesting? As I have mentioned, the prevalence of HIV is higher in women than men.
But women, you've just given me now, Frank. Let me get you.
Yes,
on
the women.
things.
The prevalence.
You've just told
the
me.
prevalence of women is 13%.
But they don't rape, like you said. Neither do they defile.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. That you see, why the women have a higher percentage is basically because of the behavior out. Because even when you go in the outside world, the women have a higher potential because they have multiple partners compared to the men. There was, I think, a survey which was made in school some time back, where they found that actually the girls between 18 to 25, they were 2 times more. Their prevalence was much more than the one of the boys.
Now, I want to put this to you. When we talk about the good thing is you've said about 10% contract HIV/AIDS within these prisons.
Of those who are of those who actually were examined, because you see this is voluntary. Even some people, by the way, on entry, they refuse to be examined.
Isn't it compulsory?
No, it's not.
Sure.
You know, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
some people refuse, it is voluntary.
So by the time maybe they find out,
because even some of those people, they refuse on the entry, but when they reach the middle, they say, ah, now it's okay, you can test me. So now you'll not call it entry testing. That is, you see, that's why you need to, for your understanding better this, what I'm saying, I am going to give you the reference because it is on our website. Take time and read that report. Then you'll find the situation is not as alarming as somebody who picked a paragraph and that's what is being amplified.
Now, could there, by any chance, I've visited prisons for a number of times as a preacher and a church, youth ministry by then, when I still had so much time on me. But there is one thing I noticed. The relationship between some prisoners that have spent some good time within the prisons, maybe they're about to end their sentence, how free they get and how close they are to some of these warders. Couldn't there be a possibility that prison officials, in one way or the other, engage in sexual intercourse with some of these people? Or the liberty they get, a prisoner has the right to leave alone Luzira, but you go to the sides of Masakawa, where a prisoner has the right to move out, go to the trading center, at liberty.
You see, Kirabo and viewers, what you are saying is a deliberate policy. It's not about the warders getting a chance to have access to prisoners. Because a person who has been incarcerated for 10 years, you don't keep him behind doors and suddenly you throw him like, you know, it's like having a broiler chicken locked in the house. Then you wake up in one morning and throw it outside and say, ah, you start fending for yourself. It doesn't happen like that. So what you see normally, we call them, those are prisoners who go out on OC's order. Those are people prepared to get used to how the public runs. So that it's part of the integration process. But it's not that they are put there to be taken advantage of. Between me and you, Kirabo, sex is something discreet. Even when you meet a married woman and say, hey, what is it? She will tell you that this stomach you see here is for what? For food. So, I have no knowledge and I have not had any report or any incident where a staff was caught with a prisoner of the same sex having sex.
Or of the other sex, opposite sex.
Or the opposite sex. Especially like for women, they are exclusively guarded by women inside, the men have to remain on the outside. And the conditions that if a woman got pregnant while in prison, actually the officer in charge must be dismissed. Because you can, how would she have gotten pregnant? Women can't impregnate themselves. So, and I have not witnessed it in the 27 years I have been in prisons. But like I say, human beings are human beings. there are certain limits where you stop. And that's why, by the way, in 1990, I remember very well, in 1997, there was a conference here at Sheraton where all African prisons health teams came and they made a Kampala declaration. That's why, if you check in the records of fighting HIV/AIDS, Uganda Prison Service is one of the first institutions to institute the AIDS campaign committees for prisoners and staff. Actually, that was in 1998. And those committees have been running, sensitization has been going on. That's how eventually we even invited in CDC, Center for Disease Control. And then that's why we have been carrying out surveys. We have carried out survey for TB, and because of that survey, we have got interventions, and the TB spread was cut. Actually, we dropped from about, because the spread was at around 15%. Now it dropped to below 4%.
Well, let me just remind our viewers that you can be part of the topic of discussion this morning. I have the mouthpiece spokesperson of Uganda prisons, and one of the things I'm getting to know about Frank is Uganda prisons seems to be the first and leading in almost all angles. One time he was talking about the rate of re-offending or committing crime, and said we have the world's best top, but that we shall discuss. The show is still going on, so take advantage of the number on your screen or our Twitter handle which is on your screen. Send me a WhatsApp message or a text message and I'll be reading out your question. We're looking at welfare of prisoners, and we started with the report that was out that Frank here has been explaining that I think, well, it could have been a mountain built out of a anthill, but of course she has not refuted the fact that there are those that contract HIV/AIDS while or inside prisons in Uganda. Now, Frank,
you see, humanity is, I always give an enlightenment of the church. We all go to church or even the mosques every Friday. But is it possible that all those who have gone to church and listen to the message will follow it to the letter? So that's what society is all about. Sometimes some other people listen, others listen to follow, others listen, others even don't listen. They are there physically, but they are not there mentally.
Now, so this brings me to health services in prisons.
Yes.
We have 260 prisons,
yes,
and these prisons are supposed to have 20,000 inmates. That is their capacity. As we speak, we have 76,000, I stand to be corrected,
yes,
inmates. Now that means the congestion has doubled times 4. Now with this
actually, for the simple viewer, where we are supposed to have 1 prisoner, we are now having 4. A space of 1 prisoner is being occupied by 4.
Now, how do you then manage health services? How do you handle? You talk about HIV/AIDS care and treatment and other diseases. You talked about TB. How do you handle health with this population growth?
Of course, what you are seeing, we're expressing about what is happening in prisons. I don't know when you last went to Murago or Chirudu or Kawembe. When did you last go there?
I don't remember.
That's the problem. Please go there. When you go there and you see the congestion levels, where the patients are in corridors, others are in the verandas, that tells you exactly that we are suffering the same way because we are in the same country called Uganda. But for us, our first emphasis, of course, is hygiene. And then those examinations we are doing and surveys we are doing is to be informative to us, to see how to survive in the most difficult and precarious situation. And that's why this survey was not conducted by members of parliament. This survey was conducted by Uganda Prison Service to see, because it is so much asking, do you know about HIV? Do you know what causes? You see, if you read the whole report, then you will not be worried by these exaggerations. And that's what I'm trying to explain, that we do this to see where are the gaps and how do we fill these gaps. Yes, health remains a challenge as a country, as an institution, but it's our country, it's our economy. Therefore, we have to go on like that. I have seen a number of times people, even members of parliament, go to hospitals and they burst in tears. I have seen reports how many people cannot access an operation when they are going to deliver. So we should look at our country, and we should struggle to uplift our country to where we need it. Because the situation is not so good. Yes, we are not at the worst, but I think there is a lot that we need to put in to improve our conditions.
Now, that explained regarding health. Of course, there are also some issues here and there that where we've seen much as the improvements, but still wanting, and notably there are some deaths we've had. People ask, the Misangos, there's this, is it Canadian man who died of cancer? There, you know, when does Uganda Prison Service discover that this person needs extra attention?
One,
in terms of health.
One, we have facilities to the level of about 80% of examination on entry. That's one. Two, because for us we run a family system, we on admission we always get the background of the people we have, which is about health, their trade, their background environment, their ailments. Most of those things are documented. That's why even we go a step ahead to check any damages on your body. We check your height. We check your malnutrition status. So that when we start on you, and then it is maybe a month or two, we should be able to judge, have we improved this person's status? And that's why at least every prison has a health worker. Not a doctor, but a health worker.
Some people have alluded to that checking at entry as dehumanizing, violation of human rights. One said you go to the extent of checking Bwana Kubwa.
It is because sometimes that's where they also hide. That's where they hide their contrabands.
So you tell someone undress, then let's see what you're carrying.
Mr. Kirabo, have you ever fallen sick?
Yes.
When you go to the doctor, doesn't he tell you to undress?
Yes.
Is that
he's a doctor, I'm sick, he has to examine my
body. When you are a prisoner, there are terms and conditions you have to go through as a prisoner. And of course, it's not normal, but those are the conditions of a prisoner. And that's what makes a difference between a free person moving and a prisoner. It's like if you are going to work at UBC, and they will say, we want somebody who is qualified in journalism. You can have a first class in engineering, but if it is not journalism, do you present it and they give you the job? Isn't that abuse of the right of a person who is more qualified than the one who is not less qualified? So certain organizations have dictates of culture. There are things that they do's and they don'ts. You know, that's what is even killing our country here. That's why why I'm saying that, like in our capital city, today KCCA comes and puts a green. Tomorrow somebody comes selling toilet paper. A green which was put with millions, somebody who is selling a toilet paper of 1,000 tramples on it and it dries. But when you talk, they say, it is my right to have food. Can we have rights with responsibilities and obligations? So if the worldwide, by the way, it's not a Ugandan case. There is no prison that will admit you without checking you. Thorough checking. To the satisfaction of the person who has admitted you that you are actually not carrying any contraband.
Just reminding our viewers, please send me a text message or a WhatsApp message regarding what we are discussing today, and that is the number on your screen, and I will be reading it out. I have a guest, the spokesperson of Uganda Prison Services, Frank Baine, and he will be able to answer to some of your concerns regarding the welfare of inmates. Now, you talked about that proper checking, but let's also look at another very vital element when it comes to welfare prisoners. Fellow Ugandans, when you talk about the 260 prisons that we have all over the country, we talked about their capacity, which is 20,000. They are having 76,000. Now, when you look at this, we have 38,994. These are convicts. Now, those are serving their sentences. And this is where the trouble comes, where I've brought in this figure. These are the people I'm going to be discussing with the next issue we are going to be handling. The convicts remandees, we have 37,121. Those are remandees. Now, these ones, they have not yet been convicted of the offenses that they were charged with. They're still going through court trial. Then we have an increasing figure, because the last time I had Frank, this figure wasn't this big.
They were about 300.
They were about 300. But now we have 478. These are debtors or civil prisoners that are, you need to pay me and you've not paid me. Well, through court we go to these prisons now. And the funny thing with these prisoners, every day I think I have to send 3,000 to feed that prisoner. Yes, you who has arrested this person. Now, I want to go back to the convicts. There is manual labor. I was reading something regarding, is it Rimi Prisons Farm? I hope I've had the right pronunciation.
It's one of our biggest prison farms.
That there, if you've been convicted, you've been in Ruzira, you've been in Chitalia, you've been maybe in PG, Chigo, and you're taken to Rimi, you're going to suffer and understand. You're exposing this excessive labor.
Let me tell you, 80% of Ugandans are engaged in agriculture. It's only the likes of Mr. Kirabo.
I am in agriculture, but I don't.
Who has never held a hoe that thinks that digging is dehumanizing. No. When court gives you that you go and serve a sentence of 5 years, then prison is supposed to prescribe. You see, when you go to the doctor, he prescribes for you. You go to the nurse, you get the injection, you go to the pharmacy, they give you the drugs, and you go home. But now, the problem that we are having from our people, they want to become the doctors, the patients, and the nurses. So, when you are admitted to a prison as a convicted prisoner, there must be work which you should do as part of your sentence. It is not a punishment, but it is to help you pay for what you did or what was confirmed that you did, even if you claim you didn't do it. And that's why farming, on the contrary, that farming, by the way, has helped prisoners more than you think. Because when the Minister of Agriculture made the survey, they discovered that it is those people who have been in prison farms that know how to use a fertilizer, know how to plant in lines, and know how to look after crops. By gaining this experience from the what? The prison. But when you get people with the background of the town, whereby to them getting a hoe is a crime, that's when they are the ones who say that it is hell. But first of all,
Frank, let's get these things right.
Yes.
Holding a hoe or digging is not the problem. But when you listen to these stories, this is excessive. Someone revealed and said that, you see, you start online, there is some, then the pace at which you're digging, the distance, it is hard work, much as it's not the normal digging. Then away from the prison farms, now someone at Kirabo hires prisoners. They are put on a lorry, they are taken to someone's garden, and someone tells them, I want this done in 2 days. Musururu moja, with the canes, start digging. You rest, you're disciplined. Then that is not digging.
Anybody who beats a prisoner for not doing the right digging is a mistake, and that one, when he's got, is penalized. But for a prisoner working, whether inside the prison precincts or outside, that is a prescription done by prisons. That's the function of prisons. And like, if you think you are going to go to the prison to sit, you pray you remain in remand. But as long as you are a convict, you must perform work. That one is standard, and it is not you to determine which work you do. The work is measured by those under you. When you go to class, a contribution to your being where you are.
Well, you can continue sending those messages. A text message will do me okay on that number, but also a WhatsApp message. Now, we've talked about that labor. You've rightly said this and that.
And it is well prescribed, by the way, in the Prisons Act.
Who takes this money? For example, without working on prison farms, you take them all over.
That money is registered. The prisoner gets a token of appreciation. And the rest of the money is used for the management of the prison, and it is audited.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The rest of the money is used
for the management of this.
Now, who collects? I mean, who knows? Yeah, Kirabo has given them a 200,000.
That's why I'm saying there is a register. Yeah, that money is recorded.
So who is in charge of this, particularly within prison?
Who is in charge? Who is in charge of UBC?
Have my managing director.
Now, does the public know how much money you collect per day?
No.
But don't the auditors know?
I'll tell the IGG to investigate that money. In some areas, those are making a lot out of this prison.
You see,
no wonder the hard work that you say is
let me tell you. By the virtue of the fact that you are recruited, trained, and deployed to work in a specific area, then there are terms and conditions you operate on. So you don't assume that it is only you here who can be angels, then the other ones they are irresponsible and guided and they can do everything. No. That's why I told you that every station you go that does labor outside, there is a register for that labor. How much money came in, how much has been allocated to prisoners, and what the balance has been used.
But why don't you give these prisoners the right amount of money when they are going out? Many of them,
what is the
when
right
they are calculating,
what is the right
they will tell you that I was supposed to maybe move out of prisons with this amount of money, but I got less by this.
No.
Explain that. You're cheating prisoners.
No, we're not cheating prisoners. You see, there is one big problem which you people are falling for. That when a prisoner comes, first of all, he has to be trained. For when they are training you, you don't earn. Now you are earning as a journalist at UBC. When you were at the university, were you earning?
No.
So now, would it be fair to say that since you started the school, you should be paid until when you, even now, if you wanted the lump sum, they are calculating the gratuity. They should even include the one when you were at the university. So that's what happens with the prisoners. There is a period when the prisoners are being trained on what they are doing. And that period cannot be paid for. So the only paid for time is when a trained prisoner is doing gainful work.
So do you train them to dig in people's gardens? Because this, someone says, I did this amount.
You don't wake up in the morning and run to the garden. It starts from somewhere. It starts from somewhere. You see, if I come here and find this building, it is always very easy to say, these people did the shoulder work. But you see, even if it is shoulder work, they started from the foundation. They collected bricks and sand and the like. So sometimes you are looking at the end point. And that's why we see our system, because it is very well recorded. That's why you will get what is due to you. Because even if you don't give the prisoner this money, do you think the officer in charge remains with it? No. This money comes from government. So, but you have to calculate what is due for a prisoner. If you are being trained to become a tailor, you are spoiling materials, or a carpenter, you are breaking saws, you are spoiling hammers, you still expect to be paid on top of you spoiling the things. Yet we are supposed to pay you when we have given you the skill and you have started producing, they said, sewing clothes. Then we pay you. That is a day worked, not a day trained.
Okay. Now I'll move to accommodation. We rightly said we have 260 prisons. They're supposed to accommodate 20,000 people. We are having 76,000. There have been complaints to have these people sleep. One told me that these people even sleep while seated. There is a way you...
Well, Mr. Kirabo, the issue of congestion is not the okay, as the end point, we have to be blamed for congestion. But congestion is a wide aspect. That one, do we have the money and we have failed to construct? The answer is no. Because we are operating at 45% of the budget we are supposed to be using. That's one. Two, sometimes when I'm looking at congestion, I don't look even at only the prison. You are looking at the prison. These days from 17 kilometers away where I sleep, I used to move for 15 minutes. But now I use 1 hour and 20 minutes to cover the same distance. Why? The road is impassable. That's why I was saying that if you have got a chance to visit hospitals like Chirudo and Murago, and you see the flood of people, then you will get worried and say, where are we going? So, as a country, I think we need a national policy to ensure the congestion. And then the other challenge, especially about prisons. I want to assure you that if all these remands had been cleared and were with the convicts, at 38%, at 38,000, would be having less than double the congestion. Because ideal remands are not our people. Those are courts people. Now, so I think in order also to ease this, we need to find out how can we quickly, as we are, because the strategies we seem to be putting are not yielding much success. Because yes, there are programs like pre-bargaining and the like, but it's not easing the congestion in the prisons. The other day I was challenging my colleagues in police. He said, if police is doing very well, which is true, they have expedited on cases and the like. Now, everywhere when you go to court, the cases being answered are so many, but the problem is the other day, the prisoners' number is increasing. Do you know that by the time we entered COVID, we had 49,000 inmates? During COVID, we could agree that the systems were not working. The numbers went to around 60. But since we left COVID, the numbers have gone. Now we have added 16,000 inmates. So where is the problem? If everything seems to be moving much faster, how comes the numbers are also increasing? And that's what we need to analyze. Is it because the crime is increasing? Because if you tell me that you'll find that like right now, court disposes of over 5,000 cases. If you are telling me police is investigating almost 80% of the cases, how comes we still, yes, there is a significant drop from the remands because they used to be 51%, but now they are 48%. But has that one helped in terms of numbers?
It hasn't.
So that's the challenge about statistics. Actually, that's one of the things I was also going to tell you, that you know what was interesting when you go to this report of the AIDS, you look at how many people were tested. If they say only some tested like 50. Now, then they are basing the statistics on that. Some of these statistics are a bit exaggerated.
Okay, well, in the interest of time, I'll ask you one final, then go to the questions. Still regarding welfare, let's go to the feeding in prisons. I was one time in prison, not as a convict or remand, but like I told you earlier. And one of the issues raised was the quality of food given to prisoners. The beans are not at the best when it comes to posho. I don't know, for heaven's sake, why you for all years stuck to giving people this chachu maize brand.
Now, that's exactly where I come in.
These are not, if I don't give that to my dogs.
No. Let me tell you, that is the biggest disillusion we have as Ugandans. If you want the most nutritious posho, it is the one where you don't harrow for the covers. When you go to the neighbors,
disorganizers.
No. When you go to the neighbors, nobody harrows their portion. It is only in Uganda for you who are interested in color. And by the way, let me tell you, I know especially people from the central and west, they so much want to eat matoke. But do you know that in terms of malnourishment, you read the Ministry of Health report, It is people in the central and the south that are malnourished simply because they think by eating matoke they have food value. Do you know why you remove that, what you call chachu, and you give it to pigs and chicken and cows, and they grow fatter than human beings? So for us, we are aware that the food nutrients are in the cover, not in that inner white thing membrane you see there. And that's why right now, if you entered any of these prisons at random and removed, let's say, 20 prisoners, dressed them like 1 inch, and got also sampled the group of 1 inch, 20 of them, and put them in one group, anybody who doesn't know, somebody will quickly say those ones who have come from the prisons are the ones who are the free people on the what? The color may not be okay. The things which are good for the body may not look appealing in our eyes. The greens don't look appealing, that brown portion is not appealing, but they are the most nutritious part that the body needs.
Why then is this good portion never served in high-end hotels, never eaten in people's homes, but restricted for prisoners, never for export?
That's what I'm saying. You know, that's what I'm saying.
If it was very nutritious and worthy of how you're trying to hype it, why don't we have very many things?
When you are outside, you see, Mr. Kirabo, outside you have options of varieties. For us, our staple food is posho and beans. So we must have the highest quality of posho and beans plus the greens for us. Because today you want to eat fish, you eat fish. Tomorrow you want to eat peas. The other day you want to eat the chicken and then peanuts. Those options are not there in the prison. See, because we have a limited menu, we ensure that all the food values are embedded in that menu.
Briefly, let's now move to the questions. Julizi, thanks for the show, gentlemen. Some prisoners are treated unfairly. You find the weak ones are beaten to do work on the same pace with those who are strong. That's what we talked about.
Anybody who beats a prisoner for work, because of work, or even for any other reason, is wrong. But a prisoner working is right.
A regional to that, someone says, good morning, thanks for the program. I ask my fellow Ugandans not to commit crime because life in prisons is like going to hell. I was once a victim, waking up at 6 a.m., having something similar to porridge and going to the garden at 7 a.m. to 1. It is not easy. The canes from Katikiros, oh my God. You sometimes sleep while escorting causes of a number of inmates in the same house. Life is not easy in prisons.
A prison is not home. I wouldn't also encourage anybody to go there. But when you are there, life is livable.
I want to know why prisoners, they pay them little money yet they work from 6 a.m. up to 6 p.m. and why are they paid little money? I'm Nathan from Isingiro district.
They are not paid a salary, they are paying a token of appreciation. Otherwise, they are in prison serving a sentence.
Continuing. This one has a few questions. Ask Afande, if officers do not have sex with inmates, where and when do female prisoners get pregnant and deliver babies while in prisons?
There is no record of any female prisoner that has delivered beyond, in less than 9 months. When she had been admitted. You see, some of those women prisoners even come when they don't know they are pregnant. You see, if you have had sex like now and you are pregnant, and you come in a way, you have been arrested in a week's time, you will go to prison not knowing you are pregnant. But the documentation is that anybody who has come to the prison, it cannot be, because if it is beyond 9 months in the prison, then that would be raising eyebrows.
Good morning, moderator. I have heard from Afande that prisoners are suffering, but they pay back what they caused as a crime. May I know how the pay reaches the complainants? And I'm very glad to have this program attended to. I hope it is touching everyone.
For your own information, anybody who commits a criminal offense, you are battling against the government. That is why when you go to court, they say Uganda versus Kirabo. The other person is a witness. So when you are being punished, you are punished in the name of Uganda. So Uganda benefits from what you do. Directly, you pay Uganda.
Now I have a very interesting question here from Godfrey. Good morning, Uganda. I am Godfrey from Ginger. I would like to know from the prison spokesperson, can they detain a child without a court process? Iggy, when my child has become a problem to the public, am I allowed to bring him to prison to prevent him from breaking the law? And if so, what's the procedure?
The children affairs are handled by Ministry of Gender. If you have a problematic child, please approach Ministry of Gender. They have remand homes, they have rehabilitation centers, they know where to put him. Minus that, you can take him to Kampiringisa for treatment, or direct rehabilitation, or to Butabeka if he has a drug-related things. For us, we don't deal with things to do with juveniles. Anybody below 18, go to Ministry of Gender.
I am very happy to see the spokesperson is clearing the air. I had a friend who was imprisoned for 6 months, and after he was released, I interacted with him to know how generally prison life is, but he surprised me that inmates are cutting themselves using razor blades. Now, how have these inmates managed to enter with such material? Best for transmission of HIV/AIDS when they cut each other using razor blades. Okay, let's also about the sleeping. Said to know the night hours when some are even sleeping. Thanks. He's asking how do razor blades.
Well, of course, prisoners.
Some cut others while they are sleeping because
when they have been admitted. Of course, because we have nails, we have beards, the prisoners are allowed to access razor blades. But like I am telling you, the only problem that happens is not that they share direct. Somebody gets a razor blade, uses it, when he throws it on the dustbin, somebody passes by and picks it quietly for their own reasons, even when they have been explained to. That's what happens like that. So it's not that of course, when they are in, like a prison is a family. Like we are at home. Is it possible that you will be at home and some few things are not there? You will find that how easy sometimes is it that in the same house you can't share a cup? There are very few families where some maybe the cup of dad, but they want the children. Chances are that they
as we come to the end, I have another interesting one. Good morning, UBC. To me, prison is a good place for training and a good place for learning the word of God. I'm watching from South Sudan. Learning the word of God.
That is religious empowerment, which we encourage so much.
Now I have finally. Good morning, UBC. Thanks for the show and conversation. I am Junior from Fort Potro. I wanted to inquire from the prisons officer that why do people who have money don't dig gardens in prisons, but only the poor ones? I still remain Junior from Fort Potro. He has some
a number of times those rich people commit offenses that would not make you risk them outside because they have a potential to get rescuers. And two, most of those people don't delay. They are the ones who get bail. The person he has been here.
This one says that they pay the officer in charge of taking, they bribe them and they leave.
No, they don't do that, but you see, it is like, even here when we are in Ozira, we have separated prisons. Upper prison is for those hardcore. A condemned person, you are not going to move around with him on the street. But the person who has stolen a necklace from a woman, KCC has rounded him, he's in Kampala remand. So they cannot be the same. They cannot be the same. And I want to tell you that society worldwide can't be the same. Even us as we are here, some stay in Kororo, others stay in Chisenyi, but we are all in Kampala. So it all depends on the magnitude. Because most of those people who you say are rich actually commit very, very, very serious offenses that you can't play around with them. Somebody they say has 1 billion is lost because of him. And you give him a chance to take him away from the station. So when he disappears, it becomes an issue.
As you say goodbye, in just a minute, time is up.
Well, the prison is a prison. We do rehabilitation, we observe human rights, but please, I remember one time I was entering one of the national parks. There was a writing that wild animals are beautiful and good, but remember, they are wild. So a prison remains a prison. So my brother, my sister, please, my son, my daughter, do everything possible to avoid coming to the prison. Especially if you think you will eat without having to work for what you eat. If you cross the line, like I always say, we never invite anybody, but we welcome whoever comes. Congestion is there, but there is still room for the wrongdoers. Good morning, Uganda.
Thank you so much for your time and making that clarification. Well, all I can tell you with Frank's explanation, do all it takes not to go to prisons. Do all it takes not to go to prisons, because it's not the best place to be. And of course, with our challenges as a country, there are still so many challenges regarding welfare. However, we testify that there's been some progress, but still limited funding becomes a problem. Have a lovely day. See you tomorrow, God willing, for God and my country.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial *165*5*3# to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
UBC. Inform, entertain, and inspire our audiences. You can watch free-to-air channel 001, DSTV channel 282, GoTV channel 371, Star Times channel 20.
Traffic crashes is one of the leading causes of death among young people aged 5 and 29 years. In 2022, Uganda registered 21,473 crashes.